We're back, everybody. It's been over 6 months since you last heard from us, but we are indeed back for a fourth season of America's favorite 49ers Vikings NFL podcast. In case it's your first time joining, I'm Erik Stenholm. I'll be joined by Joey Moore most weeks. He's off this week dealing with some family commitments. We look forward to him rejoining the pod next week. Usually at this point in the year, we've had a pod or two in the books, but we're starting a little late this year. We are going to do 4 season preview pods, 2 divisions each week. The final week will be our favorite 2 divisions, the NFC North and NFC West, along with season predictions for Super Bowl matchup, champion, MVP, all the awards, all that stuff. So we'll do that as we get towards the very end of August, first week of September, in advance of September 4th and the first game of the year. I don't know about you guys, but I am just like insanely excited for football this year. I always am, but this year I feel like I've dove into it just a little bit more, especially like early on in the preseason. Typically, I will ignore all preseason football that doesn't involve my team. But this year, just because, I don't know, it's because I don't follow the A's anymore. I really don't find myself following basketball and hockey the way I used to. I got to find something to watch. So I've been diving into like Apple TV, Sci-Fi and all that stuff. But like once any kind of preseason football came on, I was like, yeah, I'll turn it on. Let's see how Shedeur looked. Let's see how Jackson Dart looked. Let's see how, the new running back there in LA for the Chargers looked. I find myself curious. So been watching a lot of preseason just in advance of this year. So excited. So excited. We're going to start the pod today with the AFC and NFC South. In lieu of Joey's Jack in the Bum, I'll give what his Jack in the Bum of the offseason was, so we can go through that. I'll give you 2 picks, 2 you like that picks of the week, for over-unders for season win totals this year, and then we'll close, try to get you out of here in well under an hour. Usually these pods, when Joey's here, run way longer than our normal weekly pods just because we want to talk so much about each of the 8 teams we cover each week, but given that it's just me, this one will probably be a little bit quicker. We'll start with the AFC South, but first, just a quick off-season recap for all our listeners out there, some of whom are just as in tune to this as us, if not more, others who have no idea what's happened in the off-season, and then once week 1 rolls around, they'll be like, oh, he plays there now? Major storylines just to go through real quick. The tush push was not banned. It was a very close vote. Seemed like most teams were on the fence. There was enough swayed by the Eagles' position to get it just over the line. I can't remember the final vote, but it was close. It was like 17-15, 18-14, something like that. So it came close to getting banned. I wonder if it'll come to the table again in the coming years. But for now, it continues forward. Joey would take the position that he's okay with it. I would take the position that I'm not. I just feel like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it's in the spirit of football, just basically playing rugby like openly, like, okay, all we're doing is just shoving our quarterback while he holds the ball across the line. It just visually not appealing, but it is what it is. The Eagles got to love that. Teams with very strong-legged quarterbacks like the Bills and such got to be thrilled with that. But the tush push is here for the long term now. I think there was some consternation that it might have gone by the wayside after the Eagles won the Super Bowl, but that continues forward. The draft was, I would say, filled with some drama, basically surrounding 2 players. I would say otherwise it was a pretty nondescript draft. Obviously, Travis Hunter going to the Jags trading up to pick him at number 2 with the intention of fully playing him both ways. It seems like they're going to play him a ton of snaps at DB and some snaps at wide receiver, but I think a lot of people, myself and Joey included, thought he would eventually be like one of the best DBs in football and maybe play a handful of wide receiver snaps over the course of his first season, and then maybe a little bit as he gets older. It sure seems like Liam Cohen is at least early sticking to the, hey, we are going to play him a ton of snaps. We'll see how long he can hold up, but impact move by a franchise in the Jags that needs to make impact moves to move the needle at all. So I think it's a good move by them just because, okay, say they stayed at the pick they had and did the right thing and picked an offensive lineman or picked an elite running back or something, we would have been like, okay, like you're still the Jags, but maybe they can hit a home run here and he becomes the Shohei Ohtani of football. I think he'll be, a Sauce Gardner level DB and just a wide receiver 3 if he does play many snaps there at all. But that was kind of the big story of the first round of the draft. And then the overall biggest story was Shedeur Sanders, who was projected by a lot of people to go number 3 overall, projected by a lot of other people going, middle of the first round, somewhere to like the Giants or the Saints or the Browns, projected by a lot of people to fall out of the first round into the second. Nobody had him going middle of the 5th. So his slide was one of the biggest stories in recent memory for the draft. It kind of took over the whole draft to the point where we didn't really care about all the other selections because they just kept showing Shedeur and his slide. He goes to the Browns. Prior to his first preseason game, probably would have told Joey, hey, we should probably make him the jack in the bum of the offseason with a guy with that type of pedigree, that kind of college resume, that kind of talent falling that far solely based on attitude and how he treated the draft process is a colossal mistake. However, he did look really good in his preseason debut. I watched most of his snaps in that game, and I was like, okay, he can play. Like, he was good enough to where I think they can probably try to trade Kenny Pickett or Dylan Gabriel and just kind of have Flacco maybe start the first 4 or 6 games this year and then hand the reins to him and see what he can do. So I think he showed that he does have the talent to play in the NFL. He just needed an attitude adjustment, and falling to the 5th round was just the thing he needed. Couple other just quick notes, especially for fans of this pod. Sam Darnold, absolutely electric first 17 weeks of the season last year before he turned into a pumpkin. He went to Seattle. I think that was a bit of a stunner with Geno going to Vegas, Pete Carroll going to Vegas, Darnold going to Seattle. Things moving around like that with the quarterback and head coach musical chairs. I think it's a lateral move for Seattle. I think it's an upgrade for the Raiders. As a Vikings fan, I was totally fine with it. I mean, it ends up being, I guess, somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 years, $100 million for Darnold, and that was just, I mean, for a guy who the first 5 seasons of his career were so bad, I don't think you can say, okay, one really good 16-game stretch of football is not worth paying that kind of money. Like, sure, maybe he can become the next Baker Mayfield and be a franchise quarterback for Seattle on the cheap. I think that's what they're banking on, and it could happen, and I would like to see that happen. I don't know if it will. I also think Jalen Milroe is going to really push him, not for the starting job this year, but like if Darnold is, say we're in week 10 and they're struggling and he's not putting up numbers, anything like what he did under Kevin O'Connell, I think it's a possibility that they turn to Milroe at some point there because he's an unbelievably electric athlete. But that was one of the biggest headlines of the offseason that I thought got a little bit overlooked is Vikings had a quarterback who threw for 35 touchdowns and over 4,000 yards and got voted by his peers in the NFL top 100 as a quarterback. And they were like thrilled to move on from him. Like what a rare situation that is. It just shows the confidence that Kevin O'Connell has in himself and his young quarterback. Couple other things, DK Metcalf to Pittsburgh. I thought that was a good signing. They signed him to a long-term deal after they made the trade by Pittsburgh. Curious move by Seattle, I guess, under the new offensive coordinator there. Now that Ryan Grubb is out, they kind of thought, hey, maybe Metcalf wouldn't be as good a fit as JSN is there, and they brought in Cooper Kupp, and I think they'll be all right over there. I just thought that was a little curious move to let DK go. Couple other things. I mean, Derek Carr retired. That kind of left the Saints in a weird position. Saints fans wanted him gone anyway, so he might have done them a little bit of a favor there. Coaching hires. Everybody wants to, try to find out, okay, who's the best hire of the offseason. This is an A, this is an F. Everybody looks at Brian Schottenheimer in Dallas and says that's going to be an F. Everybody looks at Pete Carroll in Las Vegas and say that's a massive upgrade, and it is. I tend to put all of them a little bit closer to the C range. I didn't think there were any slam dunks. I think this whole, oh my God, the Bears are just going to be absolutely unbelievable now with Ben Johnson there. Are we sure? Like, he has done an excellent job as an offensive coordinator, one of the best in the NFL for the past few years. I don't think he has a franchise quarterback there. I think he had one in Detroit. Now, granted, Goff outside of Johnson's system and Sean McVay's system may not be a sight to behold, but a very accurate passer. Caleb Williams, yes, wildly talented, not an accurate passer, not someone who can kind of play the plays that the coach calls. He stands there and pats the ball all day. I just don't know if that's going to be short-term success. I think long-term, Ben Johnson is likely to be a good hire and a good head coach for the Bears. But year one, with that quarterback, with how he looked last year and a lot of the traits he has that previous Ben Johnson quarterbacks did not, everybody wants to give that an A higher. I would give that like a B minus, I guess. Aaron Glenn, another Lion coordinator, off to the Jets. It's better than what they've had. I think he's going to definitely like change the culture there in a way that they thought Robert Saleh would, but he really couldn't. I just don't think his ability to scheme X's and O's and hire people to take a job with the Jets is good enough to move the needle there. I think they should have swung a little bit. I think they should have aimed a little bit higher there. I would give that one a C minus. I think he's going to be bad in the short term, and I don't really see a long-term vision there that's going to be, Justin Fields, okay. Like maybe you get an elite quarterback in the draft next year, but do you really want a defensive head coach whose defenses really weren't that good to be the guy to usher in that new era? Not a huge fan of that hire. Pete Carroll, amazing coach, Super Bowl champion, been to multiple Super Bowls, almost never has a losing season, pretty much a guaranteed at least 9-8. And for a Raiders franchise that sucked for 2 decades, like it's a good hire. He's also, I believe, when the game starts in week 1, going to be the second oldest coach in the history of the NFL. And then the only coach who was older than him was Romeo Crennel in an interim role. So this is essentially the oldest coach in NFL history. That's my only pause in saying that it's like an A minus. I'll give it a B. I think there's a chance that offense is significantly better with Geno. I think that there's a chance that defense is significantly better with Carroll's ability to coach up the secondary, which he's showed at every stop of his career. I just think it's a big project there, and maybe it's year 2 or 3 that they kind of put it together. Also, that division is really brutal. So a good hire. I give it a B. And then obviously there were some, other notable head coach and coordinator hires. Nothing really moved the needle to me. Vrabel, he was always destined to be the Pats coach at some point. I think Mayo was an absolute disaster, and Vrabel was it felt like, I don't know, midway through the season that it was almost a foregone conclusion that Mike Vrabel was going to be the coach. So it wasn't that notable to me just because I thought it was going to happen well into last season. So that's just a quick look at the coaching hires. I think of those teams, people want to look at both the Patriots and Bears as instant improvement candidates, and then the Raiders as a slight dark horse. I say temper the expectations a little bit. I think all of those teams had coaching positions available for a reason. One of them will definitely turn around. To think that 3 of those head coaching hires are going to be A hires. Let's pump the brakes a little bit on that. We'll do a super quick Niners and Vikings offseason recap. I know Joey would want to get into this a little more in detail, but with him out, I'll just go through the Niners and Vikings real quick. Purdy extension, 5 years, $265 million. The numbers are eye-popping. I think it's fair. He didn't get paid like the number 1 quarterback in the NFL because he's not the number 1 quarterback in the NFL, but he did get paid, in a manner that keeps him in the conversation with guys like Dak and Trevor and Tua. And he's better than all them. So fair deal for the Niners. I think they made the right move. They let Greenlaw, Ward, Debo, Hargrave, Banks, Hufanga, Mason all walk out the door. I think Niners fans in mid-March were panicking, like, are they punting on this season by essentially letting the Purdy contract go to the wire and getting rid of all of our talent? I think by training camp, we now kind of see the vision. Michael Williams is in, as all reports in camp are that he's going to be a star edge rusher for them across from Bosa. I think it's a little bit of a retool. I think given that they were they've drawn like an unbelievably easy and rest advantageous schedule. I think they're going to be good. I think they're going to be a hell of a lot better than they were last year. I think they're going to be healthier than they were last year if they can get full seasons or even close to full seasons out of Williams, McCaffrey, Kittle, all those guys. I think they're somewhere in that 11-6 range. I think if this team was the 2022 or 2023 version with this schedule, they could go like 14-3, 15-2. I think this year's team is less talented. I have some questions for them. Offensive line, wide receiver, Joey will have definite questions for them, secondary and interior defensive line. But the schedule is really easy, and I think the division is not as good as everybody's making it out to be. I think the Rams have major questions. I think they have a serious question at quarterback with an old quarterback with a bad back. I think the Seahawks are likely to take a step down, given that, I think most people underrated how good Geno was and overrated how good Darnold was just because of the coaching. I mean, one guy was coached by Ryan Grubb, who may never coach in the NFL again, and the other's coached by Kevin O'Connell, who won Coach of the Year. So say the Seahawks regress a little, say Arizona gets just like a tiny little bit better, I think that it sets up nicely for the Niners. I think they did the right thing by getting a lot of the bad contracts out of there, by paying Purdy, and by, as they always do, emphasizing their spending and draft capital on the defensive line. So for the Niners, it's a bounce back year. They went 6-11 last year. I think they flipped that and go 11-6. For my Vikings, both lines completely rebuilt. It was exactly what the fans wanted in the offseason. Donovan Jackson, our first-round pick, slides in immediately at starting left guard. New starting center in Ryan Kelly, new starting right guard in Will Freeze, new starting defensive tackles in Jonathan Allen and Javon Hargrave, which basically kicks Harrison Phillips from our number 1 defensive tackle to our number 3, which is awesome. Like, great player. I've always had a ton of respect for him. He was not a starting defensive tackle every snap like he used to be. He's getting older. He's getting a little slower. I like that we brought in talent. A lot of early reports in camp that our 4th-round pick, Tyrion Ingram-Dawkins, was going to push for a starting job. He's that talented. I watched him in the preseason. Was not impressed based on all the camp reports. I watched every snap he played, and I was like, he's young. He looks like he doesn't know what he's doing, so we'll see. But yeah, if they stay healthy, everything looks great on paper. You have an elite wide receiving core. You have a pretty good tight end, decent running backs. The offensive line, if everybody's healthy, you have 2 elite tackles. You have 2, I think, very high ceiling guards. You have a new center who's a road grader. You have a new defensive line, interior of the defensive line that should wreak havoc and open up holes for Grenard and Van Ginkel. I think based on what I've heard from camp and what I've seen from the Vikings broadcast team about Dallas Turner, last year's first-round pick edge rusher, I don't think it's wise to expect anything out of him this year. So that is a little concerning. The way that the Vikings media talks about him, he's extremely high energy, but like everyone says, he really needs to figure it out, which basically means like the dude is not accepting coaching. He's not improving in any meaningful way from a disappointing year last year. So last year, Grenard and Van Ginkel were healthy for all 17 games. If they can get that again this year, I think we'll be totally fine. I have questions in the secondary. I thought the moves to extend KOC and Kwesi Adofo-Mensah through 2030 was the right move. The question is, JJ was given the keys and the secondary wasn't really addressed. Will we regret that at this point next year? We shall see. We'll obviously dig into that more when we get to the NFC North, NFC West pod at the end of the month. But overall, Vikings fans got exactly what they wanted. Maybe a late signing of a corner could really complete the offseason. So there's a quick recap of some of the offseason stories. We'll talk about some of those with Joey when he comes back next week. Let's get into the AFC South preview. We'll start there, then the NFC South, then Joey's Jack and the Bum of the Week, my You Like That Picks of the Week, and then we'll close. AFC South, we'll start at the top. There's really only one team in this division that has any chance of winning it, and that's the Houston Texans. I have them going 11-6 top line. Joey's got them going 10-7. We both have them winning the division. It's an extremely weak division. I think if they were in a stronger division, I'd have some more questions. particularly on the offensive line, but top line on them. This is going to be I would say top 3 defense in the NFL. Joey and I have always loved former Niners defensive coordinator and now Texans head coach DeMeco Ryans. His defenses are always really good. They haven't always been spectacularly talented. This one is particularly talented, and I think if he coaches them up, he could possibly have the number 1 defense in the NFL. I think schedule weighted, it'll be in the top 5. He may finish number 1 in a lot of the raw statistics just because they play a bunch of awful teams on their schedule this year. So I have them going 11-6. Joey has them going 10-7. I think the ceiling would be far, far higher for them if they address the offensive line. But it was a wild offseason. So they fired Bobby Slowick at offensive coordinator. Basically, the only thing I thought they needed to significantly address was the offensive line. And not only did they not address it, they got worse on the offensive line. They traded Laramie Tunsil and let him walk. Okay with that move if you then spend the savings on an elite left tackle like that on, say, quality right guard and right tackle, or, a defensive tackle and a center or something like that. They signed they traded for former Viking Ed Ingram. They gave us a 6th-round pick for him. As a Vikings fan, I can tell you, he's one of the worst players in the NFL, and this is going to be their starting right guard. This is one of their, look, we addressed the offensive line additions of the offseason, and Houston Texans fans are in for a rude awakening. The guy, he can run block, but he is a pass blocking turnstile. From the moment he was on the Vikings and given a starting role, I think most fans agreed that he was the worst player on the team that played meaningful snaps. So we were happy to see him go out the door, and he's being pointed to by some of the Texans writers as the way that they address the O-line. It's going to be a disaster there. I think this team could have gone 12-5, 13-4, or better had they, addressed the offensive line in the way that a team like the Bears did, by just spending big, trading if you need to. But they fired the offensive coordinator. They're bringing in this will be another new play caller for C.J. Stroud, a really poor offensive line. Tank Dell's out for the year. Stephon Diggs left. It's basically Nico Collins and a bunch of dudes. The offense is not going to be very good. I love C.J. Stroud. I think he was excellent last year, given what he was dealing with in terms of, I think, poor play calling. I think really poor protection. I think this is terrible for his development to put him behind this awful offensive line. DeMeco's defense is going to be great. They're going to win 10-plus games. They're going to win the division. But their ceiling is so low with how bad this offensive line is. So I have to criticize them for that. Just some quick stats on them. Last year, they were 19th on offense, 14th on defense. I think the defense improves to, like I said, top 3, top 5. I think the offense is going to be lateral. I think, yes, they have a new play caller, and that will help. I think that offense is going to be not even middle of the pack, below middle of the pack. And in an AFC that's stacked with unbelievable offenses, I think they're kind of destined to be the 4th seed and lose in either the first or second round of the playoffs, like they have done each of the last 2 seasons. So, they had an injury to C.J. Gardner-Johnson the other day. Their first round or second rounder Higgins. They're expecting a lot out of him as the number 2 wide receiver behind Nico Collins. I don't know. It feels like an incomplete roster that they kind of swung and missed on the offensive line, and I really think their ceiling could have been much higher. So Houston, top line 11-6, but for me, 10-7 for Joey. They are going to win the division, but it's a bit of a missed opportunity. I think we'll look back in December and say, man, they would have addressed the offensive line. They could have been hosting second, third round playoff games, given that they have very talented quarterback and one of the best defenses in the entire NFL. Next team we'll cover is Jacksonville. I have them going 7-10. Joey's got them going 8-9. This is an interesting project in that they bring in Liam Cohen, who basically resurrected Baker Mayfield's career. They're going to try to have him do that for Trevor Lawrence. I think it's a decent hire. I just think, much like the Ben Johnson situation, it's a good hire. The quarterback is just he limits the upside of the team so much that I don't really think it matters that much. Unless Travis Hunter just comes out and is just an absolute fucking baller from week one on the offensive side of the ball. I look at this offense that was completely rebuilt and I go, you were 26th last year. Are you going to make that big of a leap? I mean, Doug Peterson was not a very good coach in his final 2 seasons there. He was nice in his first season in 2022. The last 2 seasons, I think the wheels kind of fell off, and especially in terms of play calling. But you look at this team, 26th on offense. Former Viking Grant Udinski comes in to call the plays. I like him. I think, he was definitely a guy who's going to be a head coach someday. It's a good hire. You look at, Brian Thomas Jr., I think he's a 1. I think he's an excellent player. What do they have other than Brian Thomas Jr. and then some snaps from Travis Hunter on offense? Etienne and Bigsby are not great running backs. Offensive line is, I would say, mediocre at best. Can Cohen really make this team, as elite as he made Tampa Bay's offense last year when they were, I believe, number 3 in the league? With Trevor Lawrence and these weapons, Tampa Bay, as much as I fault them for some of the stuff on defense, they had so many offensive weapons. And again, they do this year. Liam Cohen is not working with that kind of a cupboard in Jacksonville. So they're going to have to be carried by their defense, I think, at least in year 1. And it will improve, especially if Travis Hunter is a Sauce Gardner level rookie on the defensive side of the ball, which I think a lot of people think he's going to be. But it's basically unchanged from last year's 28th ranked defense. So, yes, you add one of the biggest prospects in the history of the NFL. That's great. Everything else is basically the same, and they were absolutely torched through the air last year. It's going to be more of the same this year. I think they're going to be 20th, 22nd ranked defense. That's why I have them 7-10. There's not a lot to dig into here. Unless Travis Hunter is, like I said, like the Shohei Ohtani of the NFL, I just don't see it. I see 7-10. Indianapolis next. I have them 7-10. Joey's got them 5-12. I'm starting to lean a little bit more towards Joey's position there. Anthony Richardson, man. 2-3 preseason snaps, and he gets hit, runs to the sideline, never to be seen again. Hurt his pinky, supposedly. Goes back to practice on Saturday and is apparently fine. How much more do we got to see out of that guy to be like, he's not an NFL player? Joey was all over him. He loved him coming out of college. Yes, he can throw the ball 70 yards. He's got one of the strongest, physical arms we've ever seen in the NFL. He's not a strong player. He gets hurt very easily. He's not someone who's tough or would be considered even NFL level of tough. He's not a leader. Shane Steichen has staked his job, his career to this guy and essentially given up on him, if that tells you anything. If you're coaching for your job, if you're coaching for your NFL head coaching life, and you're going to go with Daniel Jones, the guy you drafted in the top 10 must really suck. So that's the first thing I look at here is Anthony Richardson, man. I think this is the end for him. Last year, 17th ranked offense, 24th ranked defense. They added, Khalil Herbert, a lot of new offensive linemen with Kelly and Freeze going to the Vikings. Tyler Warren, the first-round pick, is going to put up a lot, especially if Jones is the quarterback, as he is known to check down. It's not going to be a dynamic offense at all unless Jonathan Taylor has another one of his all-pro seasons, which I think will be very difficult when your quarterback is Daniel Jones. Defense, they added Ward and Bynum. It's a new-look secondary, but did you see who they hired at defensive coordinator? Lou Anarumo led the unbelievably awful Bengals defense last year. Terrible hire. This team is going to bottom out. I had him going 7-10 just because I actually think Steichen's a pretty good coach and he gets the most out of a mediocre roster year after year. Man, Lou Anarumo as a hire, that could kill Steichen's career. You could hire any college defensive coordinator and be like, he's come up with some innovative ideas. That's why I hired him. When you hire Lou Anarumo, you got to be like, Well, in the 2021 playoffs, he did okay for 2 weeks. So, I mean, rough hire. They're not going anywhere. Joey's got him 5-12. I say 7-10 with a chance to bottom out. Tennessee, I have him going 5-12. Joey's got him going 7-10. He's a little more optimistic. Joey likes Cam Ward. I like Cam Ward as well. I think in most drafts he would not have gone number 1 overall, but Tennessee clearly had an immediate need at quarterback. They had to take him. He is immensely talented. I just think with Brian Callahan as his head coach, he's probably not going to reach the ceiling that he would if he fell into a better situation. Last year, they were 27th on offense, 30th on defense. They're giving him a brand new offensive line, basically some new wide receivers with Lockett, the rookie receiver they drafted in the second round. There's some talent there. Apparently, there's been a pretty significant injury to Tajay Spears, who's kind of a dynamic second running back that they have that helps out of the backfield with catching the ball, so that might hurt them a little. But it's not a high ceiling team. I think year 2 for them will be telling as to whether Callahan is the guy going forward and Ward is the guy going forward. Unless Ward is just absolute knockout from week 1, I just don't see any way that they can contend for the playoffs this year, even in a weak division. They were the number 2 passing defense last year, which is pretty stunning. I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that they were so terrible on offense. The teams didn't really need to throw on them, but it is somewhere to start. So I think that's part of the reason Joey's got them going 7-10 is the defense could be, if they shore up the run defense, better. New starters, Xavier Woods, Cody Barton. Defense is going to keep them in games. I don't know if they can put up that many points, unless Cam Ward comes in and is basically like rookie Cam Newton, where it's clear from day one, like, oh, this guy's such a good athlete, he's going to take over the NFL. So let's do a quick recap. The AFC South. I have the Texans winning the division at 11-6. The Colts next at 7-10. Jacksonville at 7-10, and then Tennessee at 5-12. Joey has Houston at 10-7. Jacksonville at 8-9, Tennessee at 7-10, and then Indy at 5-12, bottoming out. That's your AFC South preview from the You Like That Feels Great Baby podcast. Quick look at the NFC South before we get into Joey's Jack in the Bum of the offseason. Tampa Bay. This is where we differ pretty significantly. I have them winning the division, but I have them going 8-9. Joey's got them going 10-7. They are going to win the division. It is a very weak division. I think 2 of the teams in this division do not have any chance of having a franchise quarterback. So I think Baker, despite losing Liam Cohen, despite being in a division with, I would say, a relatively talented Atlanta team, they're so clearly the class of the division that I cannot pick them to miss the playoffs. I look at this roster and I say, okay, they spent their first-round draft pick on a wide receiver, like the one position that they really did not need. They were the number 3 offense last year. A little bit silly for them to waste that kind of draft capital on a position of strength already. I get it that Godwin is coming back from injury and Evans is old as the hills, but interesting choice in my opinion. Yeah, look at that. Number 4 offense, number 16 defense. Egbuka, the first-round pick, like I said, very talented, very crowded wide receiver room. Bucky Irving, a guy I love. After watching him play like 3 games last year, I was like, oh, that dude's going to be a stud. I think he could break 1,500 yards. One thing to keep an eye on here, this is a very, very veteran team. A lot of the guys from the Tom Brady era are still there. Tristan Wirfs is hurt. They say he should possibly be ready for like week 3. I would monitor that. He's one of the biggest, most talented humans in the NFL. So an injury to the lower half is very significant if he doesn't get it right immediately. I do think the offense will regress a little bit without Liam Cohen there. I still think it'll be maybe a top 10 unit, especially given how easy the schedule is that they play. The reason that I have them finishing 8-9, still winning the division, but a losing record, the only ad that they made on defense of any note was Hassan Reddick, who everybody remembers his holdout. He was not an impact player last year. He was in years prior, but it was not an impact player last year. They were number 29 pass defense last year, number 16 overall because they could stuff the run with Vita Vea. Team's getting really, really old on defense. Number 29 in pass defense, and all they added was Hassan Reddick. I think they're going to get gashed. I think this defense is going to be surprisingly bad. This is why I have them finishing with a losing record. So I marked them down for 8-9. Joey's got them for 10-7. Atlanta, 7-10. I have them finishing second in the division. Joey's got them 8-9, second in the division. I kind of do like Michael Penix. I think he's going to be an accurate quarterback. I just think he reminds me a lot of Teddy Bridgewater, the young Viking, where it's like not dynamic at all, very accurate, but he is not going to push the ball down the field a ton. He doesn't have a cannon arm, and he's never going to be like the leader of a dynamic offense. You can win games with him. He can put the ball where it needs to be on throws under 20 yards. But unless, there's some sort of major change there in offensive play calling, I think the upside there is not that high. They were 13th last year on offense, 23rd on defense. There's enough talent there. You look at Robinson, London, Mooney, God help us, but Kyle Pitts is still there. I think it's a middle of the pack offense. You look at that defense. So they bring in Ulbrich, who was the interim head coach for the Jets last year, to try to improve off that 23rd ranked defense. They sank all of their draft capital and so much money into getting 2 defensive linemen in the first round of the draft. They have to hit on both. Otherwise, I think this is going to be a spectacular failure. I listened to a lot of preview pods. The consensus throughout the industry is they have operated this offseason like they are 1 or 2 pieces away from winning the Super Bowl, when everybody looks at them and says they're 1 or 2 pieces away from having a winning record. So very curious offseason from them. Unless, the 2 first-round edges, Walker and Pierce, if they're Freeney and Mathis, sure, they can contend. They can win 11 games. If they're, as everybody expects, 2 pretty good first-round defensive linemen, might get like 6 or 7 sacks each, they're going to go 7-10, 8-9. Like, the roster is just, the ceiling is not high enough with that quarterback. With that kind of quarterback, you need to have a 2022, 2023 49ers type core to win enough games to contend for, winning multiple playoff games. It's just not going to happen with Michael Penix. Unless he, like I said, fundamentally changes the way he plays. I don't see them being one of those just uber deep threat offenses that can make up for some of the defensive problems that roster has. Next up, we'll do Carolina. Joey's a little more optimistic. I have them 6-11. He has them 7-10. I think Canales has been given a pretty difficult situation there and made the best of it. Bryce Young was 5 minutes away from being like out of the NFL. Oddly enough, Andy Dalton getting into a car crash and missing a few games saved Bryce Young's career, because he put together some of the best games that he's played since he was at Alabama to save his job and kind of eliminate all questions as to who the starting quarterback would be in the 2025 season. My thing is, okay, they were the number 23 offense last year with Bryce Young playing well. They were the number 32 defense. Granted, they were very injured. They traded away some of their best players. I get it. I think Bryce Young is somewhere in between the monumental bust we all thought he was after one season and the, oh, hey, this guy's actually not that bad that we saw in the second season. I think he's somewhere in between the 24th and 28th best quarterback in the NFL. Like, this team is going nowhere. Everybody says Ejiro Evero, the defensive coordinator there in Carolina, is a future head coaching candidate and almost a lock to be a head coach at some point. 32nd ranked defense. I don't care if you're injured. I don't care if the general manager takes away some of your best players. You got to be able to coach left-handed. You got to be able to get something out of your team. And they were 32nd last year, the worst defense in the league by a full standard deviation. They were like what Washington was in 2023, where it's like this team could not stop anybody. You could put Alabama out there, they'd score 24 points. Like, it was a disaster from Carolina. So yes, they sank a bunch of money into their defense. 4 new starters, 2 highly drafted pass rushers. I think they'll still be like bottom 10, bottom 8 in the league. So this team isn't going anywhere. Did not like Carolina's offseason. On the offensive side of the ball, you're like, yes, Ted McMillan, he could be somebody. I watched preseason. He could be, say he's a 1. Say he's a true 1. He's in that Amon-Ra St. Brown level just below the Jefferson Chase, those guys. Great. What kind of impact is that going to have on winning football games when your quarterback is Bryce Young? You don't have a great offensive line. You don't have a good defense. Like, they are several pieces away. This year's all about them finding out if Bryce Young is just a guy or someone that they can give a second contract to. So in Carolina, you are not concerned with winning games this year. You're concerned with going, is Canales our guy? Is Bryce Young our guy? That's all it's about. All this preseason hype from the media about them being a dark horse playoff contender. At the risk of eating crow here, do not believe that. Like, Bryce Young needs to play like he did 2022 in Alabama for them to have any hope of even sniffing like 8-9 or 9-8. It's not a good team. New Orleans really don't need to dedicate a lot of time here. I got him 5-12. Joey's got him 4-13. God help Kellen Moore. I mean, you want an NFL head coaching job so bad. I get it. This is as bad a situation as there is. The way they run things down there, Mickey Loomis has never rebuilt ever in his 20 plus years there in New Orleans. He just keeps kicking the can down the road. He did this during Breeze's final years. He did this under the years that, Sean Payton was basically dragging it out with like Jameis Winston. I mean, Dennis Allen, like, he just keeps kicking the can down the road, and this is what you get. Like, this is, I think, the worst roster in the NFL because some of the worst teams in the NFL, like Cleveland, New York Giants, they have dynamic players. Like, you look at the Giants, they might have the best pass rush in football. Granted, the rest of the roster is awful, and they're going to go like 4-13, but they have 3 of the 12 best pass rushers in the NFL. So there's something there. You look at the Browns, they're going to run the ball real well. They got a pretty good offensive line. They got probably the best or second best defensive player in the NFL. You look at the Saints, I mean, what on earth do they have? Last year they were 24th on offense, 19th on defense. They basically, because of the way Mickey Loomis runs things, they have no cap space. They have no ability to add like impact players. And then they spent some of their best draft capital on Tyler Shuck, a 106-year-old quarterback in the NFL draft. Like, I think he was the second oldest player drafted in the NFL since like 2007 or something. Brandon Weeden being the only one older at the quarterback position. It's the worst QB room in the league. It seems like Spencer Rattler's going to start, which, if you watched any of him last year, I mean, he will be the 32nd best quarterback in the league on week 1 if he does start. Terrible offensive line, aging and injured skill position guys. I love Alvin Kamara, but he's at the end of his career. This is going to be the 32nd ranked offense in the league. Like, Kellen Moore, he's got to find a franchise quarterback and start building towards something in 2026 and 2027. This year, they're going to bottom out. I think this is all signs to me point towards Arch Manning is going here. Whether it's in 2026 or 2027, it would be a nice, his dad or his grandpa played there. Then he can play that. Like, this team is not concerned at all with winning in 2025. I have them going 5-12 just because I think Brandon Staley's actually a decent defensive coordinator and he's going to do okay there. They were 27 against the pass, but it's a veteran unit. So I think, like we saw with the Saints last year, early in the year, they will be okay on defense. I think they may be able to win a couple games early in the season, but the bottom is going to fall out at some point. So New Orleans, definitely, they're going to suck. There's just no way around it. So that's the NFC South preview. Super quick. If Joey was here, we'd go a little more in depth. We can discuss that a little next week. But just to recap the NFC South, we both got Tampa win the division. I have Tampa at first at 8-9. Joey's got Atlanta second, as do I. I have Atlanta second, 7-10. Carolina third, 6-11. And then the Saints 5-12. Joey's got Tampa Bay 10-7. Atlanta 8-9, Carolina 7-10, and then New Orleans 4-13. So there's your NFC South preview from the You Like That Feels Great Baby podcast. It's time for the first time in 6 months for Joey's Jack and the Bum of the Week. He's out. I'll fill in for him. He texted this in. I gave him some options. He had a clear winner for Bum of the Offseason. Candidates Shadur Sanders, draft slide, bad attitude in the drafting process, cost him millions of dollars. He's not going to win Bum of the Offseason because he's actually shown in camp and in preseason that he's a pretty good player. The Steelers probably would have been my pick if I picked this. What are they doing? I don't know what they're doing. I don't know where they're going. Rodgers isn't going anywhere. He's 41. He doesn't want to get hit anymore. Yes, the Steelers will have a good defense, but Rodgers and DK Metcalf, is that going to take Mike Tomlin back to winning playoff games? It's not good. It's just they're going to go 9-8. We all see it coming, so that Mike Tomlin can say, I've never had a losing season, and Rodgers can say, oh, I was okay at the end of my career. Like, that's all we're going to see. Maybe 10-7. Who knows? Just it was time for them to blow it up, and they continue to refuse to do so. The Saints, like I just said, they're terrible. The general manager there, it's malpractice what he's done. I mean, basically from when Breeze retired until now, there's been 5 seasons of opportunity to just completely blow it up, and he keeps refusing to do so. That team needs a hard reset more than any team in sports right now, and yet they continue to just kick the can down the road, and this roster is just a disaster. So the Saints completely mismanaged the offseason. And then Caleb Williams, I love picking on him as a Vikings fan. Multiple things have happened to him this offseason that just continue to show why Chicago is cursed at the quarterback position. You had the viral video last week of him doing that drill where you're trying to throw the ball in the net, just a routine drill that if you watch Hard Knocks, Josh Allen's just hitting it every single time. And Caleb Williams throws 10 passes in a row and almost completely misses the platform itself. So woefully inaccurate in that video. A lot of stuff came out in the offseason that he wanted to engineer a trade of his draft pick to the Vikings, and that his dad said that he did not want to play for the Bears because, quote, that's where quarterbacks go to die. How they let that get out in the media is beyond me. And then just all these different anecdotes coming out of Bears camp, coming out of the offseason, when there's slow news days and they're looking for something, you will find many people willing to, off the record, say that he's not a leader, he's not an NFL player. You hate to say things like this, but just look at the guy and how he talks and how he behaves and his body language. He doesn't inspire any confidence. He's almost effeminate in some ways, and it's like, yes, the whole thing in draft night where he's like painting his nails, we're like, oh, ha, 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 that's, how very Gen Z of him. But then you see him in interviews and you see him with his teammates and you're like, dude, this is the NFL. Like, you got to sack up at some point. He threw that tantrum after the drill and the viral video last week. He threw a tantrum during the season last year when he felt he wasn't getting good enough blocking. And granted, he was getting killed back there behind an awful offensive line, but he has shown no ability to this point in his career to be a leader and to, be anything other than kind of a improvisational quarterback. So he was one of the candidates for sure. But Joey goes with, for the Jack and the Bum of the offseason, an excellent choice, Jerry Jones. His emphasis on waiting to the last minute on negotiations has led the team to never getting close to Super Bowl caliber. That's what Joey said. And it's spot on. Like, if you want to look at the number one reason why the Dallas Cowboys haven't been to the NFC Championship game in 30 years, it would be the way that Jerry Jones constructs this roster. A year before he needs to give the guy the deal, he should be giving the guy the deal or trading him. And he just refuses. He waits till the absolute last minute, like he's doing right now with Micah Parsons, like he did last year with CeeDee Lamb, like he did the year before with Dak Prescott, like he's done in years past with Tony Romo, Ezekiel Elliott, all these franchise guys. Instead of trading them at their peak or signing them before their peak, he waits till their absolute peak and then gives them number one money. Like Dak Prescott's contract. I love Dak Prescott. I think he's horribly underrated. I think he gets so much criticism for a guy who's just like a good leader, a good player, super solid, always gives full effort. He is wildly overpaid because, of course, Jerry waited till the last minute and signed him at the top of his value, coming off of a season where he finished second in the MVP. Like, Jerry continues to mismanage the team in a way that stripped away all the luster of America's team. If you're a Cowboys fan, you're just waiting for him to kick the bucket so somebody can come in there and run that franchise in a professional way. He runs it like it's 1992 because he won 3 Super Bowls in the 90s, and he thinks this is how things work. There was a quote that came out the other day where he said, I thought we had an agreement on the contract based on eye contact and a handshake. I'm like, that is not how the NFL works in 2025. Like, you got to get the agents involved. You got to get contracts signed. You can't just do backroom deals like you've done for years. That franchise is going nowhere. Or higher. I mean, how many people want to be the Dallas Cowboys coach with Jerry Jones still there? I get it. It's tough to find people willing to take that job. Brian Schottenheimer, I mean, really? Like, if every team in the NFL had 5 head coaches, he probably wouldn't have been hired by anybody else other than Dallas. Like, very, very odd hire. Seems like a dead man walking. Might only be a one and done before they can sink some money into other high-profile candidate in 2026. Bad offseason. Jerry Jones, jacking the bum of the offseason. All right, 2 quick You Like That picks of the week before we get you out of here in less than an hour. Houston over 9.5 wins. That, in my opinion, is going to be a lock if they get just B-, C+ offensive line play. If they get D+ offensive line play like a lot of people expect, okay, maybe this could go under. But I feel really confident in C.J. Stroud. I think he's a lot better than he showed in year 2. And like I said, D'Amico's defense is going to be a major asset. This division is terrible. I can see them sweeping all 6 division games. So then you only got to win 4 games outside of the division to win this bet. I think this is an excellent bet. I have bet it. I have bet them to win the division at, I think in some places it was as low as like -120. Right now it's probably closer to -200. Defense is great. They're going to be in every game with that defense. Even if Stroud struggles, even if he's getting pummeled back there, they're probably not going to give up more than 20 points in some of these games. So I like Houston. Carolina, under 7.5. Every single sports writer's breakout pick in 2025. What do they see that I don't see with Bryce Young? Like, yes, he had some pretty good games last year. You look at the totality of his 2 seasons in the NFL, he is up there with some of the biggest busts of all time statistically. Yes, aesthetically, last year he looked a little bit more like Kyler Murray and a little bit less like Ryan Leaf. They are not going to win 8 games. I cannot believe. Yes, it's minus money. I believe Carolina -7.5 or under 7.5 is like -160 in some places right now. If you take the under 7, it's better. If you take the under 6.5, you get plus money. Man, oh man, his team is not winning 8 games. Defense was historically bad last year. They were bad in 2023. They were bad in 2022. They haven't shown anything to warrant the kind of wild card hype they're getting. Give me Carolina under 7.5. Here's the You Like That picks of the week for their very first pod of the offseason. We're going to take Houston over 9.5 wins and Carolina under 7.5 wins. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We're going to close the pod here in a minute. Like I said, we've got 3 more pods coming. Next week, I believe we're going to do the NFC East and AFC East with Joey when he comes back. Much more exciting than these divisions, much more, dynamic divisions than the Souths. So that'll be really fun to go over. After that, we'll do AFC West, NFC West, and then, or AFC West, AFC South, and then the final pod, like I said at the top, NFC West, NFC North, and season prediction and preview. That one will come at the very end of August. Let's close the pod, get you out of here. Just wanted to take 1 minute to talk about the Sacramento A's, the biggest farce in the history of sports. So many different articles have come out about all the goodwill that was offered by Sacramento towards the A's franchise at the start of the season, and how all of that is just completely gone in terms of local interest in local media, local interest in Sacramento baseball fans, attendance, goodwill with, local broadcast teams, local stations, I mean, it is an absolute zero there in Sacramento. They put Vegas on the uniforms. They put Vegas on billboards in the outfield. They have absolutely no connection and have shown no ability to connect with Sacramento, to the point where I say just monitor this, not even skeptically, just keep your eye on the possibility that this team could move to Vegas early or move back to Oakland. I really think the Sacramento thing is not tenable for the long term. If you look at some of these recent games, they obviously they're pricing the seats very high to try to keep up with payroll, because they had to increase payroll to avoid a MLB union grievance this year. But watch as this team continues to, again, they're decent on the field. I think they're basically exactly what everybody thought they would be: good on offense, bad on the pitching staff, but not dynamic enough to bring in new fans. So let's look early September, when the team is 20 games under and it's 102 degrees out there for a day game. They'll report the attendance at like 8,500. It's at like 2,000 people. Like, this thing is such a tire fire. I follow these accounts in Vegas that basically gauge local interest in casinos, sports, entertainment. Vital Vegas is a great follow if you don't follow them already. The local interest in the A's in Vegas is zero. It is zero. They keep kicking around dirt. They're not doing any actual construction there that isn't Bally's trying to set up for their supposed future casino there. This situation is not even remotely close to over. It has been a tire fire from the moment that we all saw that their press conference area was a rented tough shed on opening day. It's going to be a tire fire for years to come. I think, almost any other ownership group in MLB would have sold at this point. We've seen many sales this year. We've seen the White Sox, the Twins, the Rays all go on the market and get sold. I think the A's are next. I think MLB wants to save face and probably push Fisher towards selling the team to a Vegas-based buyer so that they can actually get that construction project off the ground and move the team to Vegas. But keep your eye on this situation. I mean, it is unlike anything we've ever seen in sports. A team with no city, a team with no owner, a team with no future. Really just an unbelievable situation that my favorite franchise in all of sports has become just a laughing stock in a way that no franchise has ever been. So thanks for that, John Fisher. You got me more excited for football than ever, because I don't give a damn about MLB anymore. That'll be it for the first pod of the 2025 season. We'll be back every week. We're going to preview divisions for the next 3 weeks. We're going to preview week 1. We're going to recap week 1 and look into week 2, and we are going to move forward because football never ends. We're back, folks. We'll be back again next week. Thanks again for listening to another episode of the You Like That Feels Great Baby podcast.